Why do my interviews look like crap? I think it's a question a lot of beginners ask themselves starting out. You walk into a scene, you set up, buddy. I think it's a question as beginners we ask ourselves a lot. We'll show up to a scene, we'll put our camera, we'll have a nice frame, and then as we actually light it and put everything together, we're looking at our frame. We're like, why doesn't this look right? Why isn't it cinematic? Today, I really quickly want to go over just a foundational setup that you can use when starting out that doesn't require a lot of lights, doesn't require a lot of time. So if you show up and you only have 20 minutes, you can get your camera set, you can get your lights set, and you're just good to shoot. This works as a foundational option that you can then grow off of. I'm a firm believer that the best looking interviews are going to come from spending time lighting your scene, not your subject. But to be able to do that, you need to know how to quickly light a subject and move on. Now, obviously, the first thing you want to do when you show up on site is get your camera placement. Everyone talks about the depth you want behind your subject to separate them from the background, but what they don't talk about is the color of the wall. That can make or break your framing. As a strong recommendation, I always try to avoid yellows specifically, followed by creams, whites, and grays. Whites and grays can be usable, but it's a lot easier for your subject to get lost in that background. Typically, I'm trying to look for greens, blues, even purples. Reds are usable, but because we have reds in our skin tones, you typically want them more as an accent color, not a full color. And on top of that, you also want to look for practicals. We'll get to practicals in a second because that can do a lot to elevate your scene. But for right now, I just want to focus on a 2-point lighting setup. So I didn't check my mic pack when I was recording and lost the audio during pretty much the meat of the content. But that's okay. I told myself I was going to make a YouTube video. I'm using a similar lighting setup to right now, so we're just going to hop into MS Paint and go over what I went over on camera earlier. Hopefully it'll be even more concise. We'll keep this video under 5 minutes and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Jumping into it back from where we left off. As I set my frame, one of the things I consider is I have this window in the corner. That way we've motivated our light direction coming from this side. That's why light is hitting this side of my face, shadow side's over here, and you can see the light wraps around my back like it's naturally coming from this window. If you look on our wide shot, you can actually see being keel it by this big china ball. Now, if I was doing this for real and not trying to do it quickly, I probably would have moved this table and tried to swing the china ball around. That way it would wrap around my face even more, and that way this side wouldn't be as dark as it is now. Now for the hair light, I'm using this 4-foot old Quasar tube. You can get these for like $40 now on eBay, or less if you buy them in a kit, on a homemade dimmer over here. The nice thing about these 4-foot tubes is they wrap really softly around the shoulder and the hair. And even though this light should only really be hitting this shoulder, it doesn't look too weird to have it hitting both. I think if I was to critique this frame, the only thing is we're getting a little too heavy in the shadows on this side. So I'd probably go in and set something like an ultra bounce just out of frame or something, just to kind of lift these shadows. I did it digitally a little bit, but you can really tell here on the wide, when I'm not facing that light, this is really in shadow. And this side of the room is pretty dark. So throwing in a bounce or something would help a lot. I'm a little annoyed because when I was shooting this for real, I had my phone set up to change the lighting setup and bring in a practical and this 60X over here. But I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like, and we'll just jump into it the same way we jumped in here. Okay, so going to the second setup, you can see a couple things have changed. It's not huge, but it does create a very different look than what we were doing earlier. So the first thing we did is we rotated the camera. You can't see here, but it had gotten a lot darker in the day. It was around 5 o'clock and the sun goes down at like 5. So there's still some light out, but the whole room had gotten a lot darker. So we cut on the slamp, same kind of thing. That then motivated this hair light you're seeing hitting my shoulder and a little bit on the face. And that's being done by this 60X right here. Now that looks really bright in the wide angle, but that's actually at like maybe 5%. Fully flooded out just to kind of keep this from being too aggressive. The key light stays the same. I rotated myself a little bit to try to fill in some of those shadows. One of the things I did try to talk about here is the importance of potentially, if you have the option to bring in a third light like this Quasar tube, it's not a terrible idea to stick it somewhere over here just to lift that side just a little bit. Doesn't need to be much, or even in this situation, spinning that light so it's facing that back wall and just giving an ambient lift to the whole room so it's not so dark. Because when you're looking at this frame, one of the things you can risk falling into, that's the wrong one. One of the things you can risk falling into is just this side totally obscuring itself into darkness. Now that's not a huge deal, but depending on the content you're shooting, this may be too high contrast. You may need to go in, flip that light around, add an extra light in, and lift those shadows a little bit just to give it a brighter look and not quite as moody if it is something that's supposed to be, less dramatic and more positive. I'm definitely missing a little bit of the nuance that I had when I was delivering this on camera and had the lights in front of me, but I'll go ahead and pass this back to the younger, dumber, disappointed me who just discovered that his batteries died. That's really about it. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds here on lighting a full interview scene. I just wanted the foundational, here's how to set up 2 lights in 20 minutes really quickly. If you're interested in seeing more elaborate setups, I post a lot of our behind the scenes in my YouTube shorts. I do plan on adding a part 2 to this series that'll go more into how to light a full scene. If that's something you're interested in, please leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see what else I can make.